All right, today's session is Meet NVivo, Explore and Visualize Your Data. So we'll look at telling the story of your data with visualizations, charts, graphs, models, etc. It's a pleasure to join you today. As I said, my name is Stuart Robertson, and I'm an NVivo consultant and trainer, and I have been working with NVivo for 15 years now. I started out with NVivo 2 and have grown with it ever since. Currently, in the NVivo 11 for Windows version, there are 3 different options available. There's Starter, available to help you analyze text, look at basic queries, some basic visualizations are there. Pro, which encompasses everything from Starter, but also includes some additional data types, being able to do advanced queries, charts, diagrams, and maps, as well as the ability to be able to handle teamwork. And finally, in the Plus version, you have some advanced queries, charts, and diagrams, and social network analysis, along with the ability to use automated insights, to use algorithms for generating potential themes, as well as sentiment analysis. And of course, Plus will also work for teamwork. When you think about these 3 in terms of the visualizations, in the Starter edition you have things such as word clouds, word trees, compare diagrams, and explore diagrams. In the Pro version you'll add things such as mind maps or concept maps, project maps, hierarchy charts, sunburst charts, and cluster analysis. And finally, in the Plus version, you'll add the egocentric sociogram, network sociogram, and Twitter sociogram. There's a number of different file types that NVivo 11 can work with. Our Starter version focuses on PDF and Word, but as you move into Pro and Plus, you bring in things such as video, audio, bibliographic software, Zotero, EndNote, SurveyMonkey, Qualtrics that you can work with, social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, as well as EndNote and Evernote. When you're thinking about today's session, if you think about the fact that a picture is said to be worth 1,000 words, can you imagine what visualizations do for your data? This is just a sampling of the visualizations that are available across the NVivo Starter Pro and Plus editions. Today, I want to share with you a sampling from within NVivo itself. The sample will include word clouds, word trees, the mind and project maps, comparison diagrams, and the hierarchy chart. When you think about working with NVivo, the process that you go through will be similar, although the methodology you employ may be different along the way. But you'll start out by gathering information, importing that information into NVivo, explore and analyze that data, and finally visualize and share that data out. Let's take a few moments now and step into NVivo to actually see the software in action. Today I'm working in NVivo Plus. You'll notice that the structure of NVivo is very familiar. It was modeled after Outlook. I'll be working in our sample project in studying environmental change down east. That way I have access to a number of sources as well as a large amount of coding to help me bring home the idea of these visualizations with more impact. When you think about your project, we often will start our projects thinking about what we want to research. What's our question? What might be the way that we would explore that question? One of the first visualizations that you might encounter under the Explore tab is the idea of a mind map. So I may be starting out a project and I want to look at environmental change down east. I'll go ahead and name it and create a space in which to begin to capture my thoughts and my ideas as I'm going through this. So I'm going to maybe start out with environmental change. And I might want to think about some of the categories that I would use with this. So perhaps I will be thinking about the idea of the water. And with a click, I can start to add other pieces. Maybe I'll think about land. I'll think about building and real estate. And maybe under there, a couple of thoughts about impact on the environment and impact on the economy. I can begin to look at my thoughts, my plan in a number of different ways. What's also very convenient about this is I can right-click and I can export this map. That way, if I'd like to share it with colleagues, if I need to share it with instructors with whom I might be working, I have the ability to do that even if they don't have NVivo available to them. One of the pieces that I really appreciate about this, because it is a newer feature, once I've gone through this process, I can come up to where it says create as nodes, and by clicking that button, I can start to create a node structure right from the ideas that I've generated. So if I go over to my nodes here and I look at environmental change, I can start to see how my map, my mind map here, has now become a beginning structure for the coding process. And in NVivo, for those of you who may not be as familiar with it, what we've created here are referred to as nodes. And you can think of nodes as bins. They're places where I can go into my data and be able to take some of that information, pieces of it, that represent a certain concept, theme, or idea, and be able to code those or collect them in that bin so that later on I can look for patterns or trends across that data. For those of you who are working with text-based data. There's a number of options that we have, a couple of which will generate some very nice visualizations. To show those, I'm going to move into the query option or the query tab at the top. One is a word frequency. Perhaps I'm starting to work with my data and I'd like to get a very quick idea of what were the most frequently used words. I may want to look at some interviews that I've conducted, and I might like to focus on maybe the top 100 words. When I run the query, NVivo will give me a list of the most frequently used words. It does have a stop words list built in, so you'll notice there are no filler words like and, the, but, or. If there are words that are coming up on my list that I don't necessarily need in my list, I can add words to the stop words list. One way to do that is to right-click on one of the words in the result here, and I can simply add it to the stop words list. And I can add as many words as I need. I can also remove words from the stop words list. And then when I rerun my query here quickly, that word has now been removed. One of the visualizations that's very popular is the word cloud. And if I go over to the far right-hand side and I take a look at the word cloud tab here, I can start to see how a word cloud has been generated to give me more of a visual sense of what are my most frequently used words. There are a number of different options how I can present this. For example, for printing purposes, the black and white version is usually quite appropriate. The nice thing about this is I can export the word cloud, so I can send it out as a bitmap, as a JPEG, and then be able to drop it into a Word document, into a report, into a PowerPoint for a presentation. And as I said, there are a number of different options. One that I do like to point out is the tag cloud, because depending on your audience, some forms may be more appropriate than others. Speaking of that, what's nice about this is not only does it give me a chance as the researcher to get a visual cue of what's happening in my data, and I happen to be a visual person, so this is quite helpful to me, but it also provides me with a resource that I can later use to invite an audience to enter into a dialogue or an understanding of the points that I'm trying to make here. Once you've seen the frequently used words that are there, you may like to begin to explore certain words that are also conceptual in nature. Again, we have a query for that, the text search query. One of the things I noticed was the idea of fish or fishing came up frequently. So perhaps I'd like to find that inside of my data. And in fact, maybe I'd like to find other forms of that word or even explore potential synonyms that are in my data. In this case, I'll look at the stemmed words. I'll look through all my sources here, and I'll go ahead and run the query. Again, NVivo has given me a nice list. I can see what sources have the data in them, as well as looking at the number of references. I have the ability to look at the references themselves to get a sense of how it's being used. But again, I have an option for visualizing it. If I come down to the last tab here on the far right, I can see a word tree. And the word tree is showing me the 5 words leading into and the 5 words coming out of, in this case, the word fishing. What I really appreciate about this is because of the structure, I can quickly see how the word is being used across multiple sources, And I can get a sense of what are some keywords coming right before, right after. So for example, recreational is coming right before fishing. If I hadn't thought about recreational fishing, this is letting me know that I probably should pay some attention to that. What's also nice about this is I can right click and I can run another text search query right from here, and NVivo will take me in and show me now the phrase recreational fishing. Again, I can right click and I can export that piece and be able to share that out. A popular choice for us when we're looking at our queries and also into our visualizations is the idea of the matrix coding query. It allows me to complete basically what would be a crosstabs of my data. So for example, if I have used attributes and I want to see how different age groups might have interacted with different concepts for which I've coded, I can create a matrix, and in each of my rows of the matrix, I could choose to represent a different age group. And in my columns, I could represent different concepts for which I've coded. In this example, I'll go in and take a look at facets of the natural environment. Running the matrix coding query itself gives me a nice table that I can start to look at for potential patterns or trends. But what it also generates is a chart so that I can begin to look for patterns and trends while visualizing the data. And I do have some options, a few options, if I'm looking at charts. So let me look at a grouped bar chart, for example. And I can begin to see my different age groups and get a sense of what were the topics that stood out to them. Again, I can export the chart itself. I can also export the matrix. So if there are some specific types of charting that you'd like to do, you could export it out to Excel and be able to use further charting options available in there. Another one of the visualizations that we have, sometimes we want to get a sense of what's happening in our data. And under the Explore diagram, we have a number of different options. One is the hierarchy chart. And I might look at a hierarchy chart for different nodes that I've created. I might look at a hierarchy chart for perhaps the, look at all my nodes here, and coded at all sources. And I can start to get a sense of where I have high numbers of, perhaps in this case, references. So I'm looking at different references as I move my cursor over. I can see the number of coding references, direct and aggregated, the items coding. Another time I might want to start to explore a hierarchy chart for some of my nodes, or actually this time maybe I'll do sources. And I'll focus in on the interviews that were done as part of this project. And I want to see them coded perhaps at my thematic nodes. So instead of all nodes, I'll focus in on selected ones, and in this case, I'll look at the thematic nodes that I have here. And I can start to get a sense of, right now it's showing me the number of coding references. So I can see if I just want to look across this data at the number of references that have been physically pulled out from each of these different sources, I can. If I want to look at the number of nodes coding, I can see the balance equals out a little bit more so that they were spread over a number of different nodes. But I did have some people who seemed to either share a lot of information or talk about perhaps in depth about certain topics. And these diagrams, as always with NVivo, are live. So that if I want to be able to see the information that's there, I can right-click and open the source, and I'm right back in my data. And as a researcher, that was very important to me, not to be far away from my data, so I can always see it in context. A couple of other very helpful types of visualizations that we have. One is the comparison diagram. We often found with our old modeler that people wanted to be able to compare a pair of sources or a pair of nodes, a pair of cases, to see what data they shared in common, what nodes they were coded at, for example, in common, and where one was divergent from the other. So now we have a comparison diagram that makes that process so simple. Let's say that I wanted to compare what a couple of my interviewees talked about. I can hit the comparison diagram, go into my interviews, and perhaps I'd like to take a look at Dorothy and Charles. And very quickly, I can quickly see I've got Charles' interview here, Dorothy's represented here. Anything that is in the middle would be nodes that are coding to both, or at this point it's project items that they both interact with. Anything on the outer edges is interacted with by one and not the other. I can quickly focus. Maybe I want to look simply at the nodes coding. So I have checkboxes that will allow me to do just that. And now I can focus more specifically on the nodes themselves. There are other times, though, that I want to look across more of my project to be able to get a sense of what's happening and where there might be potential connections. In that case, I can come over to the explore diagram. And perhaps I want to look at the idea of balance. I have a note about balance in this area. And I'd like to see how that connects with other pieces of my project. If I choose the node balance and I choose the explore diagram, NVivo will now show me all of the different topics, or all of the different project items with which balance is connected. Once again, if I want to focus, maybe I want to see the cases that were coded at a particular topic, I can start to see that. I might want to now begin to explore. I know that, for example, William spoke about balance, but I might like to see what else he spoke about. And with that, I can choose William and change my focus. And now I'm looking at William in the center. And in this case, maybe I'd like to just simply look at the nodes that are connected with his case. And once again, I can continue this process of changing my focus. I like to refer to it as meandering through my data, but it's a great way to start to get a sense of where are connections happening, and as the researcher, what does that mean for the story you're going to tell? What does this mean for the information that you're going to share? To have those pieces there. And as I said, I can move backwards or forwards through this and get a sense of what's happening. One last visualization that I wanted to be able to share comes out of the Explore options, and it's the project map. Sometimes when we get to the end of our project, we want to be able to visualize and even almost move around some of our information in being able to do that. So this is one that I can do this with. I'll call this Project Map 1. The nice thing about this is where I can pick and choose specific things I want to add to this map and begin to look for more specific possible connections or links. So for example, if I add a project item here, maybe I'll start out with a particular source that I wanted to take a look at. Let's see, I'll look at Margaret's interview here. And then I can add associated items. Once I place something on there, NVivo lets me know what types of associated items I have. So I might want to see the items that are coding. And in this case, I might want to focus at some of the definite thematic nodes. So if I look at a sense of community, and I notice that she talks about local connections, local identity, and local knowledge. I can continue down, maybe looking at the natural environment, and see that she talked about economic systems, habitat, and environmental change. I have some quick ways that I can begin to organize some of this information. And I might even then want to add perhaps the source of one of my other interviews. So I'll just quickly come here and look at, perhaps I just want to see if Dorothy has overlapped. And just by dropping Dorothy's piece on there, I can begin to see that there certainly was some overlap in some of the topics that they covered. This way I have a chance to start to move around to interact with seemingly inanimate topics as I'm looking at many of these pieces. Again, with any of these, I can export these pieces, and that adds a whole nother layer to your ability to be able to share the topics and share the ideas that you've generated through the research that you've done. Okay, let me take a moment to head back in here, out of NVivo, and share a couple of things with you while I open up the question panel to see some of the questions that have come in. Wanted you to know that there are a number of different licensing options. depending on your needs, be it a student license, a time limited student license, full functionality, full licenses, NVivo for Teams. With the Windows version, there is a server solution. There are enterprise license, and there's always a 14-day free trial. So if this is something that interests you, you will be able to take a look, play with it a little bit, and get a sense of what's happening there. There are also resources to help you. For example, there are a couple of handouts that are available through GoToWebinar today that I've placed out there. They're the same handout, but one is a Windows version, one is a PDF, depending on your needs. QSR has a YouTube channel, as well as user communities, very active user communities, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, plus our own group on the QSR website itself that will people are always asking questions and helping each other with these things. There are online help documents and free webinars, such as this Meet NVivo series. Today was on visualizations. We'll have others, for example, towards the end of the month. We'll be taking a look at NVivo and the literature review. Okay, wanted to just check and see if there are any questions that might have come in.